Okay, hey everybody. I wanted to walk you through a quick walkthrough of how I would go about animating this. I'm not going to say you have to do it this way, but just thought this would be something that people would enjoy watching and kind of getting some idea of how to go through this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little prep. I have two cameras in here, as you'll see. I have my perspective camera and my render cam. And if I go to my render cam, I'm just going to sort of stage this. I'm going to start off with some staging, getting an idea of how I want my animation to look. Just for the purposes of this exercise, I'm probably going to do the easiest level, normal human. So let's say this is where I want it to be. I'm inside of my render cam right now. Once I get it to the spot that I want to show my animation, so I want to show it from this angle, this perspective, then I'm going to lock this camera. And the way I do that is I can select my camera, select it with this little button here, highlight all this, say lock selected. So now you see I can't actually move my camera. And so this is a nice way to work. And then how I have a tendency to work is I will open up my this preset, which gives me a split on the top with my graph editor at the bottom. And so now my perspective camera, I can turn off my perspective camera. I can move anywhere I want to, and in this section I can set up my render cam. Something else I usually do, just so I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on stuff I don't want to, is I go to show, and then I go to show none, and I'll also turn off the grid, and then I'll go and I'll turn back on the things I want to see. So I know I want to see polygons, and I know I want to see NURBS curves, but maybe I don't even have to see NURBS curves in this, because this is just my render cam, right? This is what the animation is going to look like in the final Play Blaster render. So in this version I may do that. Go to none, NURBS curves, polygons. Okay. Now if you've left the layers on, they're both set to reference. I can't select anything in this scene now except for NURBS curves, because the only polygons in the scene are frozen or referenced. So what we're going to do is one more piece of prep is we're going to create us a way to select all of the controls at once, with the exception of this yellow control, because I'm not going to do much keyframing on that. I'm actually just going to use that to turn on and off elements of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my script editor. Okay, and in my script editor we'll see a whole bunch of text. Pretty much anytime you do anything in the script editor, it creates a new little script thing that happened here. So basically it did select -R Bob's head mesh controller. And so that's the actual Mel script to select that controller. In fact, if I copied this in here, pasted it down here, that's what it would do. It would select that controller, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom button that selects everything we want to select. The way I usually do this, I clear out everything, so I make sure that I'm not accidentally selecting the wrong thing. So I clear all, okay, and then I just highlight select everything I want, and then hold Shift and deselect the thing I don't want. Okay, so now this is actually the script to select everything except for the yellow, which I could have done that differently. I could have just very carefully not selected the yellow piece or something like that, but this works as well. And so now what I can do is I can highlight all of this text, middle mouse click, and drag that up here to my custom menu, or my custom tab, and create a new Mel button. Now the Mel button, basically anytime I select that, will run that script that we just created here. So you can see that it just ran that entire thing again. And so basically anytime I click that button, that's a way of picking all of the controls from the character. Okay, so I know that I'm going to do probably about a 4-second animation or something like that. So let's set it at about 120. That's a little long probably, but that's about how many frames I think I'm going to need. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to turn off my my appendages, okay? And I'm just going to animate this as a bouncing ball at first. I guess there's two schools of thought for this. You know what? yeah, that's what I'm going to do with this. Keep in mind that this is not how I'd always do a full character. Okay, so I'm just going to animate the bouncing ball for now. I'm going to hit S to set my first keyframe. And so what I know I want to do is I want to anticipate down. I think how my animation is going to go is he's going to do one big bounce, one small bounce. Okay? And so I need to anticipate for that big bounce. So first let's get our initial pose. Maybe where we're at is fine, but I'm going to add just a touch of like liveliness to him here. Maybe a little something like that. Sort of a front and back, just to kind of mix them up a little bit. Maybe blink one of his eyes a touch. I don't know. Yeah, maybe like that. And I want to make sure that he's, in good contact with the ground. I think he is. And so I'm going to go ahead and call that my first keyframe. I have auto key set, so all of that was saved. But I always hammer that in with S. I just make sure that I lock everything and make sure I get a keyframe on everything with that. So now I'm going to set my second keyframe. And my second keyframe I want to do is again, kind of working in the pose-to-pose fashion. I'm going to figure out where he's going to land at. So let's move him, say, to here. Okay. You may want to mix this up a little bit just so it's not being too perfectly the same. Change my twist. Set my blink back to 0. Okay. So it's very little changes, but they're there. So let's look at this, and I just picked a random spot out here. And so we know that that's our sort of our jump forward. That's the distance we're going to jump. And I just, again, I just chose a random keyframe to do that. So now I'm going to sort of pick another random keyframe to do my anticipation for this jump. So let's say frame 5. Now I know the only difference I really want in my anticipation is I want him kind of squashing down, but I don't want him sliding forward in this anticipation. So I'm going to kind of borrow from frame 1. And the way I do that is if I middle mouse click on frame 1, I can scrub in my timeline and it won't update. Okay, so you see that nothing's changing. So I can get to frame 5, and since nothing has changed, if I hit S, basically what I did is I just set a keyframe in the same position it was on frame 1. So now we kind of get that holds for 5 frames. Now pay no attention to this timing because I'm really going to rework this later. Now I'm just going to sort of create my anticipation pose for this jump. So I'm going to squash him down. I usually like rolling it forward just a little bit. This front to back stuff, I'll probably really sort of do this. I may be pushing the squash and stretch a touch much. Say somewhere around 0.4. Make the eyes just a touch bigger. Okay. So, and then I'm just going to hit S again to nail everything down. Again, since I didn't do that earlier, some of the stuff that was out here on the end kind of changed on this pose. Look, now he's squashed, and I didn't want that. So that's one of the reasons that I try to nail everything down to kind of where I want it to be. And so I can go back in here now and change that. And if I just hit S with this selected, I can hammer all of that in. So now that's nailed down. So that's sort of the importance of making sure you set a keyframe on everything, because changes I make back here can affect things up here if I don't. Okay, so this is what I get now, sort of this. Okay, so now we know, we kind of know what we have here, and we're kind of getting this free transition in between here. So I'm just going to use some of that about halfway through here to sort of get a little free information for my jump keyframe, or for my up in the air keyframe. So I'm just setting a keyframe on everything. I want to zero out some of this information. Probably zero out some of that as well. I'm alright with the rotation forward a little bit. And then I'm just going to move this up into the air. Okay. Now, rather than scrub through this to see if this looks good, which we can do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it's just misleading. because the things you end up judging are the things you haven't actually fixed yet. So what I use is I use the greater than and less than keys, or the comma and period keys if you're looking at it that way. And that'll allow you to step through frame at a time. So frame 1, neutral pose, squash, up in the air, everybody down the ground. So we can see what we're missing, just to kind of keep some consistency. I'm going to shift this keyframe. Now to shift the keyframes, I'm going to hold down shift. Basically to select any keyframes, you hold down shift and choose middle click. If I want to choose multiples, I hold down shift and middle click drag. And then once I have that, I can sort of slide these back and forth. You'll see that they'll snap to a whole keyframe. Now you can also scale this, so I can scale this out if I wanted to. The problem with that is this is now not on a whole keyframe. So if you do that, you always have to snap these back. So you highlight them, right click, and choose snap, and that will snap it to a full keyframe. Okay, so we're going to do something kind of similar to what we did here with the squash on this character's squash. Again, I'm going to scoot this out a little bit more. I want to kind of find my squash pose on my landing. So I know my landing looks, or my takeoff looks like that. I'm going to find my landing squash, and I'm going to borrow from here just so I got the right position. Maybe do about there, something like that, and hit S. And again, how I did that is I middle mouse clicked here and dragged it. And so basically I just set a keyframe on the same attributes. So basically the attributes didn't change, so when I hit S, it nailed them down to what it was showing here. Okay, so now I need to kind of get my squashiness in here. I'll squash the character down. I'm just going to do just a little bit of rolling here, because maybe something like that. Okay. I feel like I could be a little bit more creative in here. Maybe lean them in. A bit of asymmetry. Okay. So now there's something missing here. For every squash we have, as we talked about in class today, when we have a squash like this, this is building up energy. This is sort of compiling all of your energy for a force you're going to exert, right? But then there's no exertion of that force. It actually feels like, because of that, something's picking the ball up, right? It's not launching itself into the air. It's somehow like defying gravity and like sort of lifting up in the air. So we need a sort of a push off. So we'll go. I'm actually just going to go one frame in front of my stretch. And this is usually 1 to 2 frames long. That's what I usually do. And I'm sorry, in front of my squash. And then I'm just going to create my stretch. Now my stretch, I usually try to angle toward the arc. So let's imagine, let's sort of scroll through this so we can see the jump. So the jump is going to kind of go like this, right? This is kind of the angle it's going to make. So I'm going to angle the character as if it is flowing around that jump. I may actually take it further forward like this. Okay, so now what you'll see is that the character kind of pops out of that, and so it looks like it's pushing off the ground, right? Now we don't want to really worry too much about the spacing yet and how that works, but we also kind of need one of those for the landing. Before I do that, I want to make sure I've set a keyframe on everything by hitting S. Okay, so go back here to the landing. I'm going to kind of do the reverse of that. So I'll go ahead and stretch this back out. Button. Stretch this back out. And so again, I may be overdoing it with the squash and stretch, and if so, we'll take some of it back later. Okay, so if I hit play on this now, it's not terrible. So my thing now, there's a couple of things. One, I think that this distance not the distance, but the amount of frames that the jump happens in is just too long. So I'm going to use, shift middle click to highlight this and just kind of retime this a little bit, make it a little shorter. Also, I want the anticipation, the process of getting into the anticipation to happen a little slower. Right, so we get this sort of slow anticipate down jump, and then I think that this is still probably taking a little too long. Maybe something like that. So how many frames is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's still maybe a little long. Let's try that. Let's try that. I still don't think I'm one longer on that side. Is that right? Okay, it's the same. So it's the same distance that it's traveling. So now all we're really worried about is how the curves look. And so I think that that's probably about the right time. But I want the ball basically to sort of come to a rest, settle out, hold that just for a few frames, and then do a quick squash stretch jump for the second little bounce, and just a little bitty one. Okay, so if this is what we have so far, I'll go ahead and do my second little jump. It'll be even shorter. Hit S to set a keyframe, do something like that. So I'm just going to do these pretty quick. Yes. So we get this second little jump. So we got big, little, right? And so I'll have to sort of wedge some other frames in there, but I don't know, that feels kind of long as it is. So there's this long settle back up here. So I want to just grab one of these frames closer to the end, so like frame 36, and just pull that back a little bit. And the reason for that is I want it to get sort of back up here into its neutral position relatively quick, but not pop up there and just hit it and flatten out. Right? So if I look at my graph here, I don't want it to just sort of flatten out on this squash and stretch control. So we can phase it up. So I'm going to borrow from here or somewhere. That way when I set a keyframe here, you see it kind of comes up and just sort of eases in. And so we can do a little bit of moving around on it here if we want to. We can do like some leaning back, do a little bit of a twist or something like that, just to kind of and then now we're going to do a quick squash down and a jump. So we'll squash down over a relatively short amount of time. So maybe like that. So basically I'm just borrowing that keyframe again. Run that and do a quick squash down. Like that maybe. And so I need a similar landing point. Let's try here. So I want to make sure that all these have keyframes on them. And so if I scrub through here, yep, that didn't have a keyframe set on it. So basically I need to fix that by copying that keyframe and then re-adding my stretch. Okay, so now that we have that, I can put my stretch on this jump, just a little stretch, and just a little bit of a stretch on this landing, maybe something like that. And I think that, let's see how that looks. Okay, so that's not bad. So now the biggest thing we need to do now is start editing these curves. So let me go ahead and stop this video just to make sure it doesn't get too big and crash.